Townsend. I'm with the Doctor Who Society of Canada, and we're here today to talk about building Bessie. Now, building Bessie was a huge undertaking. It took several of us. The two up here, another one in the Dalek out in the floor right now, Joan and my wife down here. So we started into it. Now, how did we decide to build Bessie? Well, my wife and I were sitting on the deck, and in behind my garage was this, a 1965 Triumph Spitfire. But I have a 66 over at my garage, and the intent was to restore the 66. And my wife and I were sitting there on the deck, and I said, well, what are we going to build this winter? And she says, I don't want to do a Dalek this winter. I'd like to do, an antique car. I'd like to drive an antique car next year. So I'm looking, and she's once again, she's thinking the one over at the hangar. And I'm looking at this as I'm sitting there having a coffee, and I'm thinking, you know what? The wheelbase is the same as Bessie. Since this is our scrap car that was used for parts, most of the frame, the driveline was still good and usable. I thought, yeah, I think I can do something Doctor Who related. So I looked at her and I said, you know what? I'll build you an antique car this winter. And I didn't tell her what. So next. So I'm out in the front driveway. I pulled the hoist out, and one of the first things I had to do was remove the body, because there's very little of that body I wanted to keep. In fact, I actually didn't want to keep any of it. I thought I'll just cut the bottom of it, the floor pan out, which there wasn't much left of, but I thought I could use the floor pan for a certain amount of affixing the body to. Now, during this time, while I'm actually pulling this apart, I've moved all of my metalworking tools from our other garage to the working garage through the winter. And that's an English wheel, punishing hammer. So the whole car I was going to make out of metal. And the intent was, get all the measurements, get the lines. I knew the guys at the Doctor Who Museum, the Who Experience, which was closing at the time. So the manager there was taking measurements for me and everything else. Plus, I had 3 friends that had a Bessie in the UK, one in Australia, and they were all taking measurements as well. So I made quite a network in doing my research for the car. But in here, I'm starting to strip the car off the frame. Next. So there's the frame for a Triumph Spitfire. Now, the original Bessie was made from a 1957 Ford Popular, which is not available in North America. It was a UK car. The engine in that is what they call a side valve, but in North America, they're called panheads. So the original engine that went in Bessie was an 8-horsepower motor. My lawnmower is bigger. That's my push lawnmower. Well, once I got the body off, I had a really good frame. So the only difference in this frame to what I finally did to make it like the Popular is on the front wheels, I actually have coil springs. And this also has hydraulic brakes as opposed to mechanical brakes. So I still have the same rear leaf spring between the 2 wheels in the rear, which is what Bessie has, but the original Bessie has a leaf spring in the front between the 2 front wheels, which is what makes her steer horribly. And John Pertwee had said that this is one of the worst cars to drive. He had fun with it, but the original Bessie was just a bit of a dog to drive. So once I got the body off and I got the frame, now I have to start doing some work. The length between the wheels is proper, looks good, the wheels are wrong, but I have enough there to work with. So, next. Now this here, as I was getting the measurements from the Ford group, so there's a group in the UK, the Ford Popular group and everything else, and I was talking with the owner of that group, and I said to him, I need measurements for the frame so that I know how to set the Bessie body on. And we're talking, and I've got measurements coming from everything else. And he said to me, he said, you know what? I own the Siva Edwardian molds, the original factory molds. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off in my head. I thought, you have the molds that made Bessie on TV. You have those. Can I borrow them? Can I fly over to the UK? I arranged a group of 5 guys. We were going to rent a place. And can we use the molds and just quickly whip out a body? He said, you know what, that's a big hassle. Why don't you just buy them from there? That's what I did. So I bought the original Siva Edwardian molds, had a box delivered to the guy, had 2 guys go over, friends. They packed up the box, and then they shipped it out, and they sending it by air. So it was actually flying to Canada. Halfway through the process, they lost the box. So an extra week was trying to find the box, trying to get it back on track. Finally, it landed in Toronto, and I realized that the box was too big for the back of my pickup truck, and I couldn't get into it. So here I am, and the warehouse where it arrived at said, well, you can't leave the box here. You're taking everything. So I pulled the whole box apart, flat it, put it in the back of the pickup, set the whole body. This is the main mold for the body. So this is what I'm going to make Bessie out of. I'm going to do a fiberglass layup in this. And because the mold hasn't been used in 30-some years, I had to do a lot of cleanup. I also had to do some repairs onto it. So it took a little bit of time to do some repairs where the mold started to separate a bit. And that's just from not being used. Next one. Well, I couldn't resist. So what I wanted to do, this is still the mold. So I set it on top of the frame, and I looked at it. And, of course, I had to climb in and just sit there and look and go, this is going to be fun. But, yeah, those are the molds. It's the main body mold, the 2-seat molds. I did get the Bonnet Mold, but it was one of their experimental molds. So they were actually going to change the whole front bonnet and put a different one on. And I got that one. But the original Bonnet Mold for Bessie was loaned to the BBC when they extended the nose and they put the 18 horsepower motor into Bessie. They lost the mold. It's on a shelf somewhere at the BBC. But, yeah, I couldn't get my hands on it. Next. So during the winter, we started about the end of February, and the Dalek Orin, the big white Dalek you see out there flying around, that's the mutant from inside. He gave me a hand, and we had sprayed in the gel coat. Now, I realized that starting at the end of February, March, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to have this car ready for June. It's going to be a lot of work. So a lot of friends from Doctor Who Society, and most of them are in here right now too, they gave me a hand. They rushed out for certain jobs I had to do. When it came to laying up all the fiberglass work, Jim has said, now I have a heated garage, so it's heated all winter, and we use it quite often for doing fiberglass work for the Daleks and that. So Jim rushed over. We got the gel coat sprayed in after prepping everything, and we started laying out. And it was a whole weekend event to do the body in one seat. But it's a lot of layers of fiberglass. But it was so worth it to know that you have the exact same body as the car on TV. It's incredible. And this is the only Bessie in North America. There was one in the 82, and also the original Bessie did do a tour of North America. But there was one in 82 in New York, and it was bought by a fellow in the UK and shipped back to the UK. So mine is the only one in North America, and no one else can build one without my permission. It's kind of nice. For 5 years, you're not going to see another one. So here we have the frame, and I had cut the bottom, the whole floor pan out of the Spitfire that was basically went to the scrapyard after that. And this is the parts that I wanted. So this is where I could start measuring to mount the body down to. Gave me the floor pan, gave me the location for the gas tank. It allowed me the tunnel, which is what I really wanted for the drive shaft and all that. And we have the motor in there now. So that is a Triumph Spitfire motor. Now remember, the original Bessie was an 8 horsepower motor. And then when Tom Baker got it, they made it the nose longer, and they stuck an 18 horsepower motor, Ford Angelique motor into it, which was another one from the UK. And when that upgrade made the car really go fast. 18 horse is still smaller than my lawnmower. That one there, that's a Triumph Spitfire motor. It's a 75 horsepower motor. I honestly think I'm going to get scared in this car. If I don't go flying out. Yes, this will also be the only Bessie I know of that's going to have seat belts. So here we are, and we're in the workshop, and this is starting to get into where the people are coming in. I ended up having a surgery on my hand, so I was no longer able to use my left hand for quite some time, and I still ended up having some issues with it. But so a lot of my friends here, and we have Alex up here, Steve's here, and Joan's down here, and of course my wife is there giving me a hand. And it was the most amazing thing is when I started to make the windshield, I had the actual dimensions for the windshield, and I ended up using safety glass because that, to me, was a requirement. In the UK, they didn't use safety glass. It's just regular glass. So I had the hardest time trying to figure out what wood it was. What wood did they use? And all the owners, of 6 owners that I've talked to with Bessie, some have restored them. One guy actually sanded down his windshield for me, took a picture of the wood. None of them could tell me what wood it was. One guy said teak, one guy said ash, one guy said maple, definitely not maple, and the other guy said oak. And I'm looking going, well, as long as I can tint it close and have the grain look close, because I had really close-up pictures of Bessie, and I took the close-up pictures I had, and I ran them all to the woodworking guys, and they said, same thing, teak, oak, maple, whatever, ash. I ended up going with white oak. I like white oak. It's very strong. The grain looked almost identical in certain spots to the actual pictures of Bessie. So it was, to me, good enough. So we got the windshield made up and installed. Next picture. The wheels. To have a Bessie and have it look like a Bessie, there are certain parts I had to order that came from the Ford Popular. And they were the parts that were on Bessie. Now, remember, the Siva Edwardian was a kit before Doctor Who got it, before John Pertwee bought the car. It was actually a kit offered to the British public. And Blue Peter actually had one of the cars come in even before the show started, even before the show got Bessie. So it was on Blue Peter even before. And it was just a kit car. You took the old Ford Popular body off, you put this fiberglass body on, and all the parts were pretty much the Ford Popular parts. In order to maintain that look, I had to use the proper wheels, the proper rims. And I ordered them in from the UK. And not realizing I probably should have ordered them with rubber on it, because trying to find rubber to fit those rims was almost impossible. But the other problem I had was the Triumph Spitfire has a bolt pattern of 4 bolts in the center. So if we look at the center of here, you can see I drilled the hole for the hub, for where the hub fits on. And then I've got the 4 inside bolts. That fits the bolt pattern on the Triumph Spitfire. But the bolt pattern on the Ford Popular rims are the holes on the outside. So it bolts to the car and then bolts to the rim separately. That was an adapter plate, and that wasn't the last of those little jobs I had to do. There was a lot of little jobs like that had to be done in order to make it appropriate to what the car is. The original Spitfire that I had was a left-hand drive, like all our cars are. Well, I had to buy a new steering rack, bring that in from the UK, and make it a right-hand drive car, so that it is the same car as on TV. We can go to the next one. So there's the rim, and you can see that I got them in, and there was no rubber on them, and I could not find rubber. I could import it from the UK. The cost was about $300 a tire, and I needed 5 of them. So I'm looking at it and going, well, I don't need it on the road this year, so what can I do? And my son came up with this great idea. He said, let's go to a scrapyard, and we'll see if we can find a tire that, maybe a temporary tire will fit. And they do. The Volvo was perfect. So I opened up all the trunks of the Volvo. We pulled out all their little spare tires. Perfect size. So it does say temporary onto it. I can't certify the car, which will happen next spring, until I do change over to full rubber. But that was quite the chore. And then, of course, because the tires are the size they are, I could have put motorcycle tires on. Wouldn't have looked right. But mounting them, none of the guys I had locally could mount them because of the size of the rim and how big the opening was in the center. Steve. So, anyways, I guess that picture's not there. So I ended up having to put the tires on by hand with tire irons. And, of course, hand wasn't working, so I called my son. I said, you know what, you got any buddies laying around? He said, yeah, there's 3 or 4 of us here. Good, come on up. You're going to be doing something. So they were putting the tires on for me, and we got that all done. And then we got them mounted on. And now it sits properly. It sits higher, the thinner tires. It allows me to now put on the fenders and get all that set. Trying to find the radiator was also another chore. The Ford Popular radiator wasn't going to suit my needs because of the frame I have. But I have to have something close. It has to stick up a bit, and it has to have that proper look. And as I looked, of the 6 Bessies in the UK still running, all 6 of them have a different radiator on them. I'm going, okay, well, they all look very similar. The original Bessie has had 3 rads over its lifetime, so I can accommodate it a bit. So I ended up not being able to find one in a car, so I went to a tractor scrapyard. The radiator there came out of a 1947 Ford tractor. It still holds everything, and I mounted it on. Now, it is mounted a little too high. That was just from time. But I really just needed it on there to get my measurements for everything else, for the bonnet and all that. So that's where I just left it. It will be fixed this winter. Next picture. So there we are. Now that I have the proper rubber getting close, and I knew the measurement of the running board. So once I had that, and then went by pictures. That's really a funky picture from this angle. But I went by the pictures of where the boards and where the fender sat, and I figured out my height. And then here what I'm looking for is I need to extend the frame of the car out to meet this and to fit all this. On the original Ford Popular, they came out with little brackets. But those brackets have been bent several times. So I wanted something that wasn't going to bend. So I wanted to bring the frame of the car out to go underneath. We'll go next picture. And here you can see that I have started on the frame, and you can see the frame is out. And the little metal brackets are out. Now in the original car, and you can see right behind the front wheel there, I got a piece of metal. In the original car, that's an open gap. So whenever the car was turning corners, and John Pertwee said this, when he took a corner one time, he took a stone kicked up right from the tire right up and nailed him in the head. A little dangerous, so I've come in and I put plates in there. So if you actually look at Bessie in the booth, you'll see there's metal plates right up into there. So I brought the frame right out, and I wanted that when people step on the car, they're stepping right on that metal frame. So the running board is hooked right to that frame, and it carries a lot of weight. We figured it can easily take almost 1,000 pounds on the running board. On the driver's side. Passenger side still needs a bit of work. Next. And here we are now. This is at its first show, or not its first show, that was actually Fan Expo. So we started in the end of February, really got into it in March, and the goal was June 1st, it's to be at its first show. That was the deadline. It had to be there for June 1st. The intent was to have a driving car. With my surgery and a few other things, I wasn't able to do that. So my intent was to have a car that takes beautiful pictures. By using the yellow gel coat, I was skimming the fact that maybe I couldn't get the paint job done, maybe I couldn't get there. And the yellow gel coat is really close, so it'll hide and it takes a good picture that way. And before I go into what we're coming up with it, is there any questions? Are we good? Okay. This winter. Now, this winter, well, actually, let's still talk. A lot of the building for this is in my driveway. I'm a one-handed person at the time, and Alex, I could give Alex a call, and I said, you know, are you available? And Alex and Joan both come up, and they did a magnificent amount of work. So a lot of the times I'm looking at going, I can't do that. Can you two just get this area here done, and this is what I want, and away they went. This year, after this show, tomorrow, it is going back, and the garage is getting emptied out from what's the project that's in there right now, and Bessie's going back in. Bessie's going to be completely stripped down again. There's a couple of changes I want to make to the frame. I have to lower the rad, but now I know where the measurement is. I'm going to redo the bonnet, probably make it a fiberglass, so I'll have to make a mold of it first. And then we're going to redo the frame underneath, finish the engine. So the engine needs a complete rebuild. I do have another one that is fresh, but I want to save that for the other project. So I'm going to take this one. I'm actually going to re-sleeve the whole engine. So I'm going to pull the sleeves out, put new sleeves in, put new pistons in, rebuild the heads, new carburetors. And I have to change the carburetors so that I can get the sound of the original Bessie. The two carbs that I have set for it that are with this won't make that sound. They'll make the Triumph Spitfire sound, but they won't make the Bessie sound. So I have to, what's on there now is two carburetors. I need to go to a single. And just with a bigger throat, that's going to give me the pulses that you can hear in the original Bessie. Same with the exhaust system. I have to actually make that from scratch. I'm going to make a special one that will give me that sound I want when I'm done, or at least I hope to. Once the frame is done, we'll start with the body. We'll get the body done. There's still a lot more sanding, some changes. One of the biggest questions I had is when we were looking at through the pictures of Bessie's history and her life, when she started on the show, all her fenders were straight out and just perfectly nice and everything else. And there was a lot of things that were basic and nice and clean. As the car traveled through its years in the show, a lot of changes had happened. When we look at the horn itself, where the horn is mounted, that is actually from the very first appearance of Bessie. And that was the only time the horn was mounted there with the ball up to where the kids can get it. Every time after that, the horn had changed and had been a different horn. So I was lucky to be able to source this one, which is an identical horn to the first year. And what else? The lamps. The lamps changed a lot of times. The carriage lamps that were mounted on either side of the front firewall there. So I found some that aren't exact, but they're really close. Now they need to be cleaned up, they need to be painted, and a few other things, but they'll look almost identical, or I will order an identical set. We haven't decided on that yet. The lamps are ready to go. I still need to do wiring. Hydraulic system. Once again, when I pull the body off, I have to install hydraulic brakes, the hydraulic clutch, and the gas, and a little bit more work on the floor pan to seal up the whole area. And I do have to install the final work for the seat belts. On the back of the car, once the gas tank goes in and all that fitting goes in, I am going to put a pedestal that will mount the spare tire there. So that we'll have the spare tire on the back of the car like you see in TV. And we lucked out again. One of the guys in the UK, and he's actually a chaplain for the Navy, when he gets back, he's on duty right now. When he gets back in the end of November, he's taking the soft top off his Bessie, which needs to be redone. He's going to de-seam the whole thing, take all the sewing thread out, so that we just have the panels. And then he's going to make patterns for it. And he's going to ship them to us, the patterns, and we're going to be able to make an exact replica of the whole soft top as well. So we're hoping to have that on for next year. It's not a prime need, but it would be a nice thing to have. And then we have a few other future thoughts as we travel. The reason why we're doing this is, A, the wife wanted an antique car. She didn't quite know what she was getting. Sorry, dear. Yeah, it's an antique car. It draws a lot of attention. We actually took it to a car show when was that? July, August? August. We took it to a car show in Toronto. We were invited. And my son and I, we loaded up and off we went. And I took the Dalek too. And they'd never seen Dalek. I mean, these were car people, not Doctor Who people. It's a whole different world. But it's a car. It's a cool car. So as I pull it out of the trailer, I now have people stopping and looking. And as I push it up, and we put the sun in, I pushed it up into the driveway, and I've rolled the Dalek down. All the cars are stopping as they're going by to look at this. And the whole parking lot of people are all gathered around Bessie. And it's become a great talking point. They're all looking, talking, everything else. Meanwhile, I'm standing there, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Porsche, all these $100,000 to $200,000 cars. No one's standing by them, but everybody's gathered around Bessie. I thought, oh, this is so cool. One of the other things we want, we built this primarily every winter. I try to do a project for the Doctor Who Society in the Canadian Dalek Empire because we go throughout the year, once a month at least, to conventions, gatherings, and we raise money for Sick Children's Hospital. Now, typically a local hospital, we do an awful lot for Toronto sick kids. This event here, we're raising money for London Children's Foundation. So when we're at an event like this, we try to do a local hospital that looks after children because that's what we agreed to do. When we do Ottawa, it's CHEO. Montreal is Saint Jacques, as well as Montreal Children. Saint Justin. Yeah. Why did I say Jacques? Anyways. So we try to do that, and that's our goal for the year. So we're building new props, new things that attract, and we can achieve donations for the hospitals. It's just we're going to build things anyways. We're going to build cool stuff. We're going to ride in Daleks and be absolute dicks and shoot people and have fun, scream at you. But it's kind of neat to build something like this where if you're a fan of the older series, this is cool. Now, we did have a couple of promotion things agreed upon with Interspace. We know what happened to them. But Interspace had already booked it before the new release of the Doctor 13 series. We were supposed to be doing some filming and promos with them, but Bell Media and its infinite glory has canceled Interspace, so that fell by the wayside. But we're not done yet. We have been in talks, and when Bessie is done and she is actually safetied to Canadian standards and everything else, then there's some other talks with her actually appearing on screen. We don't think we can get BBC, but we are trying. It would be nice to see Bessie come back to the Doctor. And I think having the Jodie in there, I think would be just terrific. We do have, it is a registered car. It's in our name. And we actually have it plated, and the plates on it are Who 13. 13th Doctor. And I think it's the 13th Bessie on the road. So, yeah, because there's 12 all over in the UK that are still running. At least that was the last count. So I was thinking, well, I'm saying 13. That works. All right, where are we at for time? Well, we're a bit early. Surely, I talk fast. Surely we have some questions. 8 minutes? I can't even see him. Any questions about her or her history or anything? Yeah, go ahead. Where is? The original one? Oh, the other side of the building. Yeah, we have our booth. I don't know if you've seen it, but the booth is actually just walk straight across. We're at this same level, just the other side there. And you'll see the TARDIS and the Daleks and Bessie's sitting over there. And you're more than welcome. We ask for a donation. That's all we ask for. And whatever amount you're comfortable with. And once again, we, as a group, as a society, everything we do to show up at events and all that is all out of pocket. Everything we build is out of pocket for each of us, and we're glad to do it. So every penny that we raise at these events goes directly to the Children's Hospital. We get nothing for the society. It's all the hospital, and that's what we're happy to do. So if you can make a donation, great. Hop in, Bessie, have a seat, and, imagine driving it. Oh, and before you get out, honk the horn. It's magnificent. We love it. That's the one thing we make sure is everybody gets a chance to honk on the horn. The upholstery, every once in time I do burden my wife, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? I really need the upholstery, and I need it by June 1st. Here's all the materials. She looked at me, she says, I've never upholstered a car. But yeah, you're fantastic. So, yep, she whipped it up, and I was quite happy with it. It is great. And what else have we got? I'm just trying to think. Joan did the buttons. She's out in the driveway. So we bought this kit over at Fabricland? Lynn's Mills. Bought this kit for buttons, and Joan's out in the driveway looking, going, all these. And she's got a hammer. She's whacking it, going, Argh. But they turned out magnificent. They were great. Some of the surprises that I was really, really happy with is the support I've had while building this. Now, I live in an Amish community, Mennonite area, and the horse and buggy goes by constantly, and they've pretty much ostracized me with all the Daleks in the driveway and a few of those things. But when I was building this, a lot of the people would take walks down in front of our place, stop and look, and it was kind of neat. But when I went to certain vendors, like when I needed the windshield, I went to a vendor and he says, well, what the heck is this for? I showed him what we do for it. And they found the glass. It is a safety glass, which is ideal. They cut it, they put it in, and they called it a donation, said thank you. I was really just floored. So Bessie will have actually their advertisement on her page when she gets there. And we went to Fan Expo. I had bought the mirror. It was an exact mirror for the one that was in this particular version of car, but it's really flimsy, really, really nasty. And it didn't survive long. I think it was the third show. The second show had a crack in it, and the third show it fell apart. So I grabbed the pieces, and I went back to the glass guys, and I said, here's the rear view mirror. He looked at us and says, oh, give me a sec. He said, when do you need us? I said, well, I'm back on my way to Toronto. He said, okay. He cut a new one and said, yep, it's yours. Enjoy. So it's been really good that way. A couple of things I had a hard time with was the straps that go from the windshield down to the front. Now, the arms that you'll see there that support the fenders, I was going to make them, but they were pressed steel. So they're done in a heavy press. And to get that look that way, and I still need to clean them up and paint them, but to get the look that way, I actually ordered them from the Ford Popular in the UK. So that's another Ford Popular part that was put on. But the straps, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think, how am I going to replicate this or anything like that for a car that's going to be used, that's going to see highway speeds. And Alex comes up. And he says, well, why don't you go to a horse tack shop? Sure, okay. Found one local. Actually, Alex found it for me and sent me up there. So I went up and I looked and going, well, these would be just about perfect. They look the exact same. They're not the same material. The original material was a full leather. And he could have made me the leather ones. I said, these are nylon, but they look the exact same. In a picture, they'll be perfect. And they're strong and everything else. And one of the other guys actually uses them in the UK on his. And when I walked out of there at $9 each, I was quite happy, figuring they were going to be over $100 each. Hey, bridal, yeah, reins. Yeah, it was quite impressive. So, anything else, folks? All right. Oh, yeah. We will add that one. I'm glad you're down here. We ran, once again, we were very close for time. The last 2-week push was getting incredible. So the one thing I didn't have was the hubcaps. I have the mold for them. I got it shipped from the UK. But when I went to make the first one out of it, it was horrible. And I didn't have time to do anything else. So Dalek Oren, one of the other Daleks, drew up in the computer program the hubcaps and made them in sections, just big enough for my 3D printer to do. So I 3D printed both hubcaps that you'll see on her. Now, that's not the final. I'm going to clean them up, make them a mold, and remold these versions because they're a lot stronger than the original. And but, 3D printing them and putting them together, it was great. Folks, thank you very much for coming. I will be at the booth for a while, or I'll be out in a Dalek. But, yeah, come on by, have a look at Bessie, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Convention Junkies coverage of the 2018 London Comic Con. Please like, comment and subscribe to see more, and let us know below what you think of this video. If you would like to help us with future projects, please visit our Patreon page.